Welcome to Historical Quarrels, a podcast designed to help us understand many of this world's famous battles, /quarrels, and the petty behavior of our ancestors. I want to make this a fun and interesting experience for us to learn, and so we'll be focusing on some of the tall tales that were sown by kings, queens, presidents, and the like, to show how our ancestors really aren't that different from those of us today. So today, we will be starting with the King of Kings, Great King, King of Persia, Babylon, and Egypt. These are some of the titles Xerxes I were given as he ascended to the throne of the great Achaemenid Empire that he inherited from his father Darius, and the failed second invasion of Greece that he led. Today we'll be looking at how rebellions and constant losses to the Greeks drove this man to commit some of the most petty-ass acts in human history. Disclaimer: for the sake of humor, I will be referencing a lot of what the Greek historian Herodotus wrote about him, and using an article from landiustravel.com, which listed out good summaries of parts of his life. Many of these things that Herodotus wrote, however, were very biased, but they're also super funny to picture, and that is why I'll be using his writings to tell most of this story. Ascending the throne. While Darius was preparing for another war against Greece, a revolt was spurred in Egypt in 486 BC. Due to heavy taxes and the deportation of artisans to build the royal palaces at Susa and Persepolis. Under Persian law, the king was required to choose a successor before setting out on a dangerous expedition. When Darius decided to leave, around 487 to 486 BC, Darius repaired his tomb at Naxch-e-Rustem, and he appointed Xerxes, his eldest son Baetosa, as his successor. However, Darius could not lead the campaign due to his failing health, and died in October 486 BC, at 64. His death, while speculated by many scholars on the exact issues, many of those same scholars came to the conclusion that it was due to the anal fissures becoming cancerous tumors that were caused by the Greeks absolutely just wrecking his ass every chance they got. This is actually what caused Xerxes to become so infatuated with trying to conquer all of Greece. He watched his father repeatedly get fucked in the ass by the Greeks, and he was not happy about it. So that's why he knew that when he clapped the throne, he was going to have to just do everything he possibly could to conquer them. No, that's absolute nonsense. He actually just ended up dying of old age in an illness that began to plague him before his death. Even the Athenians actually agreed that he was a great king and a worthy opponent. Anyways, his actual eldest son, Artabazan, tried to claim the crown as he was the eldest of all the children, while Xerxes, on the other hand, argued that he was sprung from Atossa, the daughter of Cyrus, and that it was Cyrus who had won the Persians their freedom. Essentially, Xerxes here is telling Artabazan that his mom's grandpa would kick his mom's grandpa's ass, and that's why he should be king. Because that just makes absolute sense. Xerxes also had the help of a Spartan king who was present in Persia at the time. Euponidid King Demaratus. I butchered that completely. That's fine. He also argued on behalf of Xerxes that the eldest son does not universally mean they have a claim to the crown. In Spartan law, it states that the firstborn son, after their ascent to kingship, is the one who should be heir to the throne. Which I think is super fucked up, because if you think about it, let's say that you're born to your dad, right? And you're born to a commoner, and you're poor and everything. You have to go through all this hardship. You're working your ass off. And all of a sudden, you get a lucky break, your dad's king. Awesome. That's great, right? No. Your dad decides to fuck some other chick, and then he gets her pregnant, has another son, and that kid is now first in line to the throne. It makes me understand exactly why all the royals back in the day wanted to fucking murder their family. I would feel so cheated. I would also be tempted. I don't think I would, but I'd be very, very tempted to kill my kid. Anyways, some modern scholars also view this decision as unusual. for Darius to give the throne to Xerxes as a result of his consideration of the unique positions that Cyrus the Great and his daughter Atossa enjoyed. Artabarzan was born to Darius the subject, while Xerxes was the eldest son, born in the purple after Darius's rise to the throne. And Artabarzan's mother was also a commoner, and Xerxes' mother was the daughter of the founder of the empire, which is, obviously why most of the royals at court were like, nah, we want this guy, not this filthy half-commoner bitch. So the argument that Xerxes used that his grandpa is cooler than your grandpa, it worked, and he was crowned and succeeded his father in October to December in 486 BC, when he was about 32 years old. The transition of power to Xerxes was smooth, due to, again, in part to the great authority of Atossa, and not one person challenged his ascension of royal control at the court, in the Achaemenian family, or in any subject nation. Reconquering Egypt and Babylon. Xerxes was unfortunately gifted the empire at a tumultuous period for his empire. A revolt occurred in Egypt, which seems to have been dangerous enough for Xerxes to personally lead the army to restore order, which this also allowed him to begin his reign with a military campaign, which will actually screw him over later. More on that later on. Xerxes suppressed the revolt in January 484 BC and appointed his full brother Achaemenes as a satrap of the country, replacing the previous satrap Pherenadates, reportedly killed during the revolt. The suppression of the Egyptian uprising expanded the army, which Darius had mobilized for the last 3 years. Xerxes then was forced to generate more troops so he could try and finish what his father had started with Greece. However, there was also unrest in Babylon, which revolted at least twice against Xerxes, which should raise some flags for any doubter saying this man wasn't a great king. Not saying he sucked, but he definitely wasn't viewed in the greatest regard with any of his territories. The first revolt broke out in June or July of 484 BC and was led by a rebel named Bel-Shamani. Bel-Shamani's revolt was short-lived. Babylonian documents written during his reign only account for about 2 weeks, and I've got to imagine Bel-Shamani must have had the greatest of those 2 weeks ever. It probably just had a fuck ton of Babylonian orgies just right before he got fucking murdered for going against Xerxes. Not even 2 years later, though, Babylon produced another rebel leader, Shamash-Ariba. In the summer of 482 BC, Shamash-Ariba seized Babylon and other nearby cities such as Borsippa and Dilbat. It was only defeated in March 481 BC after a lengthy siege of Babylon, meaning this motherfucker was able to amass an army to stop the largest empire at the time for an entire fucking year. Granted, Persia's forces were pretty spread thin, dealing with Egypt and everything. However, I just want you to picture amassing an army large enough and essentially being a military tactician genius enough to stop this huge ass army from breaking in and stopping your revolt for over a year. That's mind-boggling to me. The precise cause of the unrest in Babylon is uncertain. It may have been due to a tax increase. Before these revolts, Babylon had occupied a unique position within the Achaemenid Empire. The Achaemenid kings had been titled King of Babylon and King of the Lands, perceiving Babylonia as a somewhat separate entity within their empire, united with their kingdom in a personal union. Xerxes just dropped King of Babylon from his titulature and divided the previously large Babylonian satrapy, accounting for most of the Neo-Babylonian Empire's territory, into smaller subunits. This is what I believe. Xerxes is becoming a petty bitch. Essentially, he was just upset that people didn't like him, and so he was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm not king of Babylon, and you're also not Babylon anymore. Fuck you guys. None of you are going to be royals if I can't have you guys respect me. So you're not even a people anymore. Go fuck yourselves. It's just, this is where I think he starts getting new and creative ways to punish people, and as we'll see later on, even gods. He decides that he needs to punish gods. It's fucking awesome. Using text written by classical authors, it is often assumed that Xerxes enacted a brutal vengeance on Babylon following the two revolts. According to ancient writers, Xerxes destroyed Babylon's fortifications, damaged the temples in the city. The Escalia was allegedly exposed to significant damage. This was a holy temple for the Babylonian people, where they, would worship their god and perform a lot of rites and ceremonies. And he was just like, yeah, you guys want to revolt against me? Fuck you. So, no more of this. And Xerxes carried the statue of Marduk away from the city, possibly bringing it to Iran and melting it down. So, classical authors held that the statue was entirely made of gold, which would have made melting it down possible. Modern historian Melly Kurt considers it unlikely that Xerxes destroyed the temples, but believed that his story might derive from an anti-Persian sentiment among the Babylonians, which, more than fair, the guy had been fucking them since he took over the empire, essentially, from his father, either through taxes. I mean, they've revolted for some reason. There wasn't, they didn't just were nah, we just want to revolt now. Fuck you, no, there had to have been some reason for the Babylonians to revolt against him. However, it's doubtful if the statue was removed from Babylonia at all. I, however, like to believe that it definitely was. So we're going to just assume that it was. Because either way, if it was a statue of God or a man that Xerxes took, he made his troops carry a giant golden statue from Babylon to most likely Susa or somewhere in Iran. No matter what, that journey is almost 2,000 miles. So after he got done reconquering this territory, he decides, hey, you know what, I'm going to take this statue and we're going to just carry it off and take it, right? However, the Babylonians were already kind of used to that, and I think he realized that because many of their statues of the gods just kind of get taken, then brought back to Babylon, they get taken again, brought back. So Xerxes, this is where his Dom Daddy phase starts. He decided to make them carry the statue the whole time, and I am positive that he was spanking the statue and just being like, you've been a naughty boy, Marduk. So naughty. How dare you try to protect your people in Babylon. I hope you're ready for the ultimate punishment, Marduk Daddy. Daddy Xerxes is going to teach you a lesson. Then as he's smelting down the statue, he's just rubbing his nipples. He's got to be JOing quite a bit, and he just comes all over the melted statue's face. Just you take that, Marduk. Show you, I'm the fucking king. Anyways, though mentions of it are lacking considerably compared to earlier periods, contemporary documents suggest that the Babylonian New Year's festival continued in some form during the Achaemenid period. Because of the change in rulership from the Babylonians to the Persians and the replacement of the city's elite families by Xerxes following its revolt, the festival's traditional rituals and events may have changed considerably. For a lot of historians, this is where they kind of get mixed up with Babylon quite a bit. Okay, we're not sure who was exactly king or what's going on because Xerxes literally fucked it. He just destroyed all the tradition, and there wasn't a lot of historical records left. Because again, petty ass bitch Xerxes. To recap, before we move on to the main part of this, which is the second Persian invasion of Greece, I highly feel necessary that we need to restate these two facts. Xerxes made his army carry a giant gold statue from Babylon to Iran. This man was so angry with Babylon revolting for what they felt were unjust taxes that after he crushed the rebellions, he straight up destroyed their holy site and then forced his army to carry a giant gold statue 2,806 kilometers and 572.33 meters. The miles base measurement is 1,770.5 miles. Though this wasn't enough for Xerxes, as the Babylonians were already accustomed to their statue being stolen away by multiple other empires. So when they were yeah, whatever, I'll eventually come back to us, Dom Daddy Xerxes decided that killing the rioters wasn't enough and he needed to kill their god. So he melted their god. Number 2. Foolishly, this man spreads his army pretty thin. He opened up his reign, dealing with a rebellion in Egypt, reconquered, had to spread his army thin in Egypt. Then he has to go reconquer Babylon. leads his army back to Babylon, and this is what leads us into the second Persian invasion of Greece. Xerxes and his absolute hate boner for the Greeks. Darius died while preparing his second army to invade the Greek mainland, leaving his son Xerxes the task of punishing the Athenians, Naxians, and Eretrians for their interference in the Ionian revolt, the burning of Sardis, and their victory over the Persians at Marathon. That Marathon victory, by the way, is literally what started marathons, because the Greeks had some guy run all the way from I think it's Athens to Sparta, and it's just this huge distance, and he almost fucking died. And he run back and forth. It was crazy. I might eventually go into that battle later for historical quarrel. Might be in a future episode. We'll see. We'll just see. I love all of this. I think it's super interesting. Anyways, from 483 BC, Xerxes prepared his expedition. The Xerxes Canal was dug through the isthmus of the peninsula at Mount Athos. Provisions were stored in the stations on the road through Thrace, and 2 pontoon bridges, later known as Xerxes pontoon bridges. Oh, wow, that's the dumbest fucking name ever. Anyways, they were built across the Hellespont. Soldiers of many nationalities served in the armies of Xerxes from all over his multi-ethnic, massive Eurasian-sized empire and beyond, including the Assyrians, Phoenicians, Babylonians, Egyptians, Jews, Macedonians, European Thracians, Paeonians, Achaean Greeks, Ionians, Aegean Islanders. I'm probably pronouncing Aegean wrong. Aliens, Greeks from Pontus, Colchians, Indians, and many more. The Persian Empire wasn't really all that Persian, honestly. They conquered a ton of lands and territories and assimilated most of them into their culture. However, in later generations, these previously conquered territories would slowly break off and dissolve from the empire. It's just it's almost like people don't like just having one ruler for too long and will revolt eventually no matter what. Super weird, right? It's nobody likes just having the same ruler and then having them try and force their thoughts on how this area should be run when they live all the way in fuck who knows where. So I get why they dissolve eventually. This is probably my favorite part of the stories, and I'm gonna label this Daddy Xerxes teaches Poseidon a lesson. He teaches this fucker a lesson. All right. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, Xerxes' first attempt to bridge the Hellespont failed when a storm destroyed the flax and papyrus cables of the bridges. So in retaliation, Xerxes ordered the Hellespont, the strait itself, to be whipped 300 times and had fetters thrown in the water. Fetters, by the way, are hot irons. He fucking tried to brand the ocean. It's so petty. Essentially, Dom's Daddy Xerxes really just gets off to punishing other cultures' gods, and Poseidon needed to be punished. By the way, this brings us to our first guest of the evening. It's the god of water, Poseidon. Hello, Poseidon. I just wanted to thank you for joining us today. We're so excited that we could get you, just get such a big name for our first ever episode.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here, and hopefully I can provide some insight for all of this.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And, well, just to get, right to the most obvious question, get that out of the way, why did you decide to fuck with Xerxes like that? You must have heard what he did to Marduk.
Well, to be blunt, it's precisely because of what he did to Marduk that I decided to mess with him. It's very hard to find a mortal willing to be that sadistic with a god. As everyone knows, I've been an active sub in the BDSM community for a long time, and it's pretty hard to find anyone willing to try to punish you when most people just want to worship you and give you praises. By the time Xerxes was around, I'd already tried so many times to get the people of Greece to try and whip me, or at least throw something into me. I sunk countless ships and even destroyed a few cities. But no, they decided they wanted to praise me even more, so I gave up. For a while until I heard of this guy named Xerxes who was willing to ejaculate onto the face of the Babylonian god Marduk.
Wow. When you heard of that, that's when you knew you needed to get this man on your bad side, right? Because like I get it, I get being a sub, so right, that's
just fuck yeah, man. Like I almost came at the thought of what he was going to try and do to me. Being a god and being a sub is the hardest thing to do, but when someone does try to dominate you, let me tell you, there is no better feeling in existence than being a sub to some mortal that you could annihilate if you really wanted to. After I destroyed the cables in his bridge, and he whipped the shit out of me, and he even tried to fucking brand me. I came so hard, I'm pretty sure I accidentally created an island somewhere out in the Pacific. And then I had gotten what I had needed for a few hundred years, so I calmed down and did bug him again till the sea battle in the Salamis Islands. And oh man, was he upset about that. Pretty sure he dumped at least 10 loads of his sea foam into me as punishment.
Well, Poseidon, thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate your perspective of the event with us. We greatly appreciate your time.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. So, anyways, Xerxes' second attempt to bridge the Hellespont was successful. Anyways, Xerxes was vicious during his the initial battles. The Carthaginian invasion of Sicily deprived Greece of the support of the powerful monarchs of Syracuse and Agrigentum. God, these fucking names, man. Ancient sources assume Xerxes was responsible, but modern scholarship is skeptical. Moreover, many small Greek states took the Persian side, especially Thessaly, Thebes, and Argos. So, like, he was able to convince quite a few of the Greeks' allies to join in with him. So, initially, this guy had a very successful campaign into Greece. Like, he was kicking ass, he was getting it. Everybody was like, "Oh yeah, fuck yeah, Xerxes' dick, hell yeah, love Xerxes' dick. Who doesn't want that? Fucking Poseidon even wanted that. Like, come on." Xerxes set out in the spring of 480 BC from Sardis with a fleet and army, which Herodotus estimated was roughly 1 million strong, which is pretty ridiculous in all honesty, because he more than likely, modern scholars are saying it's probably around 10,000 elite warriors named the Immortal, about 60,000 combatants. By the time he was trying to invade Thermopylae, he had amassed maybe at most 300,000, more than likely around 120,000. Because honestly, doing a land invasion with that many troops would just deprive that land of most of its natural resources, and he wouldn't have enough resources to feed his army. And it would cause starvation very, very quickly for most of his army. It would cause them to just literally ravage and burn through the entire countryside. There would be nothing left if he had 1 million fucking people coming in. So, so Herodotus obviously is just making it sound like, this is a true David versus Goliath story, back before David versus Goliath, and they were David, and oh no, big mean Xerxes with his huge ass army, and we still beat them. Not fucking true. I mean, they did have quite a few more numbers on them, but it wasn't that ridiculous. It wasn't 1 million to the 60 or 80,000 that the Greeks had. It was more max of 300k to 80,000 about. So there was a disparity there, but not a huge disparity. Anyways, this is where we get into the Battle of Thermopylae and the destruction of Athens. At the Battle of Thermopylae, a small force of Greek warriors led by King Leonidas of Sparta resisted the much larger Persian forces, but were ultimately defeated. The quote from the article that I just referenced right there doesn't give them enough credit, and I do eventually want to get into the Battle of Thermopylae way more in depth. However, I don't want this to be honestly, I don't want it to be an hour-long podcast. This will probably be maybe roughly an hour. I'm shooting for more about 45 to an hour in terms. I don't want it to be 2 hours. And if I went into Thermopylae, it would be about 2 hours. because there's a lot here. But they essentially were able to hold off an army of roughly about 120,000 Persians from breaking in to Thermopylae. And Leonidas did it by, essentially funneling them into that mountainside with about 7,000 men. So 7,000 versus like 100,000, which is insane. Like, that's just, it's crazy to fucking think about. And they did that for about a week with about 3 days of actual battle. And then Leonidas, after they get betrayed, ends up having most of the men retreat. He stays with about 300 of his own men. There's about 700 Thespians, and it's reported that there were about 900 Helots and 400 Thebans among them. But they ended up surrendering like bitches. But Leonidas and his 300, they all fought to the death because they all had just giant fucking balls. They, I cannot imagine just the confidence they had to have had, knowing that they were going to die and just fighting. Like, dude, they took out so many people. they killed. There isn't like exact estimates, but most of them speculated it was around like 20,000 Persians. So no matter what, it was like almost like for every Spartan or like every warrior that died, it was like 3 to 1 essentially, which is that's a good KD ratio, to be honest, for back then. But yeah, like I said, I'll eventually go a little bit deeper into the battle. There's a lot more that goes into it, a lot more politics that Leonidas had to deal with. It's actually a lot of petty shit there too that I think would be funny to get into. Anyways, according to Herodotus, the Persians broke the Spartan phalanx after a Greek man called Ephialtes betrayed his country by telling the Persians of another pass around the mountains. At Artemisium, the large storms had destroyed the ships from the Greek side, so the battle stopped prematurely as the Greeks received news of the defeat at Thermopylae and retreated. This was due to the Greeks' primary defensive strategy, which was for them to hold Thermopylae and Artesium. So after they heard Thermopylae was fallen, they're like, fuck, our strategy's gone, we gotta come up with something new. So after Thermopylae was captured, they quickly captured Athens. Most of the Athenians had abandoned the city and fled to the island of Salamis before Xerxes arrived. A small group attempted to defend the Athenian Acropolis, but they were defeated, obviously, because, they weren't a mountain pass, they were getting kicked off by Spartans. It was pretty easy for them to actually go in there and, fucking raid. Anyway, Xerxes ordered the destruction of Athens and burnt the city, leaving an archaeologically attested destruction layer known as the Pershut. Pershut. I can't pronounce that. The Persians thus gained control of all mainland Greece to the north of the Isthmus of Cornus. Xerxes, again, showing that he was the ultimate dom daddy. If anyone tried to say otherwise, he quite literally tried to fuck their gods. Historians argue that he came on the rubble of the Acropolis just to prove his dominance as the new, God King, Dom Daddy, awesome man. But as new and advanced DNA testing has found trace amounts of sperm belonging to him on some of the marble used to rebuild the Acropolis. So that's how we know that it definitely maybe didn't happen. It's untrue that scholars actually are saying that. However, we don't know that if he did or not. You guys don't know. No one else knows. Only he knows. So it could be true. I'm going to believe that's true. And that's my fucking right to. So fuck you, doubters. So we're here now to the end of his petty wars with Greece. The end of the invasion. The Greeks were in a tight spot at this point. They were, not sure how to continue. They're having, most of their northern territories conquered. So they decided to go with a, all balls in plan. And they're going to try and do a bait and switch on Salamis by having the Persians try and invade them towards there. But they knew that the waters weren't going to be, great. They're going to have unfavorable conditions for both sides, obviously. And so Xerxes ended up being induced by the message of Themistocles. Themistocles basically was like, yo, bitch, you can't fight me. I'll fucking wreck your shit, man. I'm gonna fuck up all your ships. What, you think you're a god king? Bitch, I got Poseidon on my side. So Xerxes was like, bitch, I'm gonna fuck up all your ships. Like, I made Poseidon my bitch. I whipped him. Like, goddamn. And against the advice of Artemisia and Halicarnassus, I can't, goddamn, to attack the Greek fleet under unfavorable conditions, he just, he decided to do it. Because he was like, this guy baited me. I said, bet, I fucking have to fight now. So rather than just sending a part of his ships, he went balls in. Sent his whole fleet against the Greek armies. The Greek fleet won that battle because, again, the weather was not on his side. Poseidon did end up fucking him, and most of his ships were destroyed in that battle. This ended up to a lot of him losing, most of his navy. So that was a huge loss. And according to Herodotus, fearing the Greeks might attack the bridges across the Hellespont and trap his army in Europe, which would fuck him over, because then there'd be, after losing his ships, no way to get supplies back, no way to retreat his army back into friendly territory to get more supplies to try and invade. If they took out that bridge, they'd be fucked. They'd be lost there, stranded there. So he decided to retreat to Asia, taking the most significant part of his army with him. Another cause of the retreat was probably because of the continued unrest in Babylon. Fucking Babylon, just constantly being a thorn in Xerxes' side. They just fucking hate Xerxes. That's what, three goddamn revolts. You'd think that they had learned their lesson when he literally smelted their god and more than likely ejaculated onto it. We don't know, again, if that's been confirmed or not, and no one has confirmed that it didn't happen. So, it might have happened. He left behind a contingent in Greece to finish the campaign under Mardonius, who, according to Herodotus, had actually suggested the retreat in the first place. So that force was quickly defeated. And the Greeks, by the combined forces of the Greek city-states, and they ended the Persian offensive on Greece for good. Thus ends his invasion on Greece. Essentially him, pussing out at the end. And also, again, getting landlocked, getting supply locked, super important when fighting wars. They fucked themselves, especially by going into that navy battle. That naval battle is really what fucked them, because had he not done that, he could have slowly drained the Greeks out of all of their supplies as well, naval blocked them, made sure that he was still refueling his troops back on the land through use of the ships, but he lost almost all of them. So, they were fucked. And that's truly what ended up ending Persia from trying to invade Greece again, was the problems there. So after his military blunders in Greece, he returns home. He oversaw the completion of many, many construction projects left unfinished by his father. At Susa and Persepolis, he oversaw the building of the Gate of All Nations, building and the Hall of 100 Columns at Persepolis, which are the palace's largest and most imposing structures. He oversaw the completion of Apadana and the Takara, Palace of Darius, and the treasury, all started by Darius. Apologies. Having his palace built twice the size of his father's, because again, he's a petty prick. He's like, well, if I couldn't complete what my dad did, and be better than him that way, I can make my palace twice the size of his, because my dick's bigger. Xerxes just had a chip on his shoulder. He had to keep proving that he was better than everyone else. So he also maintained the royal road built by his father, completed the Susa Gate, and built a palace in Susa. The dude, he had a huge domination fetish. He had to dominate his own dad in the end, build that palace twice size, just good for him. In August of 465 BC, Artabanus, the commander of the royal bodyguard and the most powerful official in the Persian court, assassinated Xerxes with the help of a eunuch, Aspamitris. That's right, some dickless motherfucker helped kill this bastard. My theory is the eunuch was forced to be one by Xerxes, and that's why he helped, because he was like, you took my dick away, I'm gonna kill you. Fuck you, Xerxes. And then, even though Artabanus bore the same name as the famed uncle Xerxes, Hercynian. His rise to prominence was due to his popularity in religious quarters of the court and harem intrigues, meaning he fucked all the bitches, like Artabanus fucks. He put his 7 sons in key positions and had a plan to dethrone Archimedes, and scholars suggest the reason behind Artabanus assassinating Xerxes was due to the fact that during the second Babylonian invasion, while ransacking the Esgalia, he had suggested to Xerxes that they melt the statue of Marduk in Babylon to make carrying it easier, and Xerxes was not happy with that and forced him to hold on to Marduk's golden 6-foot-long shaft almost the entire 2,000-mile-long journey. The whole time, he was whipping Artabanus while spanking the statue at the same time, calling him little names like shaft licker, little bitch boy, for daring to suggest that they smelt the statue there. That wouldn't have proven the fucking part, Artabanus, you stupid fuckface. Quote, Xerxes. Greek historians give contradicting accounts of events. According to Ctesias, Artabanus then accused Crown Prince Darius, Xerxes' eldest son, so Darius II, of the murder. They persuaded another of Xerxes' sons, Artaxerxes, to avenge the patricide by killing Darius. But according to Aristotle, Artabanus killed Darius first and then Xerxes. After Artaxerxes discovered the murder, he killed Artabanus and his sons. Participating in these intrigues was the general Megabyzus, whose decision to switch sides probably saved the Achaemenids from losing their control of the Persian throne. That brings us to the end of this man's incredible quarrels with fucking everyone in the known world at the time during his reign. I hope everyone enjoyed listening to this story, learned a few things you didn't know before. Please let me know how I can improve. I know I'm talking fast. I feel nervous during this. I also feel like I have people listening and judging me, which you guys more than likely are, so I just have to calm down. Anyways, the next episode that I plan on doing is on the pastry war, and how they claim from a French pastry cook living in Tacubaya near Mexico City that some Mexican army officers had damaged his restaurant, caused the French king to send an entire naval blockade to Mexico, and started a minor war between the two countries. Literally just over some pastry chef being fucking pissed. Like, I'm excited to research into that, kind of figure out more of the nuances. We'll probably go over like what reasons the French would have had to do that anyways, maybe just to claim more territory. It's probably the main reasons, my guess. Most wars are like, you know, they give a reason. It's usually a shitty reason, but then their real reason they don't want to say it out loud because what country does it? America does it all the time. Love this country, but we fucking know what we do. we actively try and fuck over other countries. But anyways, yeah, again, let me know. I hope this was informal, not informal, informational, and you guys learned something. I definitely learned a lot. I hope it was funny. Maybe it's more funny to me than it is to you. You know, good for me then. I'm enjoying myself. So I do think Xerxes was just a petty bitch. So yeah, again, let me know how I can improve. I'll list my email here. It's historicalquarrels@gmail.com. And yeah, just send me if you guys have suggestions too. I'd be happy to take those. Thank you again. Bye-bye.